Okay. Hi, my name is Jair Lee, and I'm a performance specialist for Exos here in Phoenix, Arizona, the headquarters of Exos.
好，大家好，我是 Exos 的运动表现专家 Jair Lee。那我现在在明尼苏达州的 Exos 的这个训练中心来为大家做这个解说。
We're pretty excited to present to you guys on the application of multi-directional speed for general population.
那我们非常兴奋的要跟大家介绍所谓多方向训练对于大众人群的训练方式。
We want to thank, in the name of Exos, IdeaFit China for inviting us to participate in this conference, virtual conference.
那我们 Exos 非常感谢这个 Idea China 来邀请我们来做这样的一个训练的一个讲解。
We really hope that this presentation is going to open your mind to different possibilities that you of exercises and tools that you can use with your clients in any type of setting.
那我们很希望这样的一次的一个讲解能够帮助大家打开您的所有的思路，能够帮助大家在训练上有更好的一些发展。
So let's get started with some of the goals of this presentation.
好，那我们先从这一次的这个课程的目标来开始。
One of the first ideas is to understand what multi-directional speed is.
好，首先我们就要先了解多方向速度的意思是什么。
Also understand some of the subcomponents of multi-directional speed, such as linear speed, multi-directional speed like agility.
好，那再来是次标题，像所谓的直线加速或者是变向、敏捷性之类的意义是什么？
We're going to look at the distinction between reactive agility and non-reactive agility.
然后我们要清楚的分析反应性灵敏以及无反应性灵敏之间的区别。
And then we're going to look at the application of these components and how they translate to be used with anybody, meaning with general population or even athletes.
然后我们要了解如何应用这不同的方式在一般大众以及真的顶尖运动员身上。
So let's take a look at what multi-directional speed is by first starting to define acceleration.
好，所以在多方向速度上，我们先思考什么是直线速度。
So multi-directional speed includes any movement that we can do as human beings or as athletes.
多方向速是人类能做的各式各样不同方向的任何动作。
So for example, in multi-directional speed, we can include movements that are going to be linear movements like acceleration.
好，举例，所以我们能做的这个各种不同样的动作，包含第一个就是直线型的动作。所以首先举例是加速。
We can talk about linear speed in a sense of absolute speed, meaning running at a consistent speed or running at maximum speed.
好，那所以在直线的速度上，我们就有分成加速期以及我们后面的绝对速度期。当你持续在跑的时候，会进入到你的绝对速度。
And linear speed also will include deceleration that's going to happen linearly or in the sagittal plane.
那还有我们在直线上，我们可能会减速，它依然是在矢状面上。
All these qualities are very important in any sport and also in life.
那这些所有的动作非常重要，在各式各样的运动以及日常生活中。
So when I think about acceleration, I can think about an athlete like we see on the picture sprinting to try to run 40 meters sprint as fast as possible.
好，举例加速期、加速度，我们可以想象一个运动员就像在图片中，他尝试在40公尺的范围之内，40米的公尺之内跑得越快越好。
But we can also think about a person who's trying to cross the street and there are cars coming his way, and he's trying to cross as fast as possible, and he needs to accelerate.
或者是在日常生活中，假设有个人想要过马路，那他必须要快速通过，因为车子会一直这个冲过来，所以他要快速的通过这个马路的路口。
Once this person crosses the street, has accelerated, has reached a certain speed, that will be its absolute speed, he's now making it to the other side, he needs to start decelerating.
好，那像他在穿过马路的过程中，从加速到绝对速度，只要快到路口的另外一边的时候，他必须要减速。
This all has happened in the same plane of motion, which is beyond the sagittal plane, or what we call linear speed.
而这一切都发生在矢状面上，那我们叫它这个叫做直线速度。
The qualities and the when it comes to strengths and shapes or patterns, they're going to vary depending on the person, depending on the situation.
那关于我们的体态，这些东西，它可能会跟你的人有所不同。
But we can agree that it will be a global perspective is the ability to produce force very quickly, right? Meaning in a very short amount of time in order to produce maximum acceleration.
那人虽然有所不同，但是以全球来讲，我们的人假设我们要在直线上快速的移动，那我们还是需要就是所谓的加速跟绝对速度，这个元素是一样的。
These are good qualities that we can develop in athletes that maybe play sports that require speed, linear speed.
那举例，在运动员里面，他们需要最快的速度，直线的速度。
And these are qualities that we can develop in general population who also want to just be fit and in good shape.
那在运动员里面，我们所为他们打造的速度，也同样可以为大众人群来帮助他们变得更加的健康，更加的身材很好。
For either of these two groups, athletes and non-athletes, the number one concern is safety.
那不管是专业运动员或者是一般大众，最重要的还是第一件事情是安全。
And the safety comes from understanding that there's basic requirements when it comes to mobility and stability in order to do this movement safely.
那如果要达到安全，最重要的两件事情就是活动度以及稳定度。那不管是谁，都需要从这边开始。
For our general population purposes, one thing that we will do is control the amplitude of the movement, meaning the distances that they're going to cover when they do any type of sprinting or running.
那他们必须要做的事情，就是在这段距离里面控制住他们的动作。
And we're going to encourage good mechanics, for example, keeping an upright torso.
好，所以我们要怎么控制动作呢？首先就是力学上的这个控制。第一个要让我的躯干保持直立 ，upright torso。
Like we see on the image, punching or driving the knees forward.
然后我们在这个图片中看到的，我们把膝盖往前用力的带动。
Attacking the ground by pushing the ground away from the body.
然后把地板用力的往后推动我的体重。
And the arm action, we look at the arms being aggressive, making sure that they match the movement of the legs.
然后我的手臂会很协调的配合我的动作来摆动。
We can say that those are basic qualities of acceleration and absolute speed mechanics.
然后我们会说，这些就是我们在做加速以及绝对速度时最重要的动作元素。
But this is just one branch of multi-directional speed.
那当然，这只是多方向速度里面的其中一环。
Another branch of multi-directional speed will be anything that involves change of direction.
那再来，在多方向训练里面的要素里面，很重要的就是如何变换方向。
And also that involves deceleration.
那当然，它就关系到了如何减速。
But it might not necessarily happen in the same plane of motion of acceleration, which is going to be on the linear.
那它这个时候就不见得是在直线上。
So deceleration is another area of high interest in multi-directional speed because if we accelerate, we need to decelerate.
那所以在多方向性的减速上面，它就变得非常重要，因为它必须要先减速以后再能加速。
So in multi-directional speed development, we can target those qualities like learning how to plant the foot, reposition the body in order to decelerate or change the direction.
好，所以在这个章节，我们就专注在于怎么样放对我的脚，以及推动我的身体的技术上面。
To do this safely, we need to have a certain amount of strength, but also we need to have a certain amount of quality of movement control.
所以在这个时候，我们就很重要的是我的力量以及我的动作控制。
So these are other qualities that we can develop, whether with athletes or with non-athletes general population.
那这个时候一样，我们针对运动员以及非运动员有一些探讨。
For those that play sports, this is something that comes very natural because in sports, deceleration happens all the time.
那在运动员里面，这就非常的常见，因为在运动项目上，他一定是一直在做这个动作，减速的动作。
What we do in multi-directional speed training is we try to enhance the quality of movement patterns and the quality of body control.
那对于他们，我们在训练的要点上是他们的动作控制以及他的体重，就是身体重量的一个控制。
Another branch of multi-directional speed is obviously change of direction.
好，再来，在多方向训练上，很重要的是另外一个元素是变向，减速完怎么变向。
If we look at this image on the screen, we can see so many things happening with these soccer players.
那在这个图片里面，其实在这个足球运动员身上，我们看到好多事情。
We see the player in white trying to evade the players in red, trying to avoid the players in red.
好，想象这个白色的这个足球运动员，他在这个图片中，他第一个要避开红色的运动员。
The players in red are trying to reposition their bodies in order to block or defend what the actions of the player in white.
然后红色的运动员，他们必须要重新的控制他的身体，或者是变向，因为准备变换方向来再去追上或者是对抗这个白色的运动员。
You can see how their bodies are moving in all different directions and planes of motion.
所以大家看到他们的身体在各个平面上移动，各个平面上转动。
And that's the essence of multi-directional speed, that there's going to be speed involved, but in many different directions.
所以多方向的这个速度就代表着它和速度要发挥在多方向上。
So we're going to see reposition of the body.
所以我们可以看到他的身体要重新定位。
We're going to see deceleration.
看到了减速。
And we're going to see reacceleration.
然后又可以看到重新加速。
So to summarize everything that we've said so far, multi-directional includes every single movement that we can do as human beings.
所以在多方向速度上面，我们现在提到的其实是所有人类各式各样的动作都探讨、都笼括在里面。
In sports, sometimes they happen one at a time, but most of the time they happen in a sequence of events.
所以在运动竞赛上面，一般的运动场上，我们可以看到可能是单一项目、单一项动作的呈现，但是大多数的时间都是这一类型的动作的总和加总在一起。
So, taking this idea into consideration, then we can see that training for multi-directional speed is complex because it covers so many variants.
所以，那我们就知道了，其实如果我们要训练多方向的速度，其实就是要训练所有的东西，因为所有的东西都，所有的动作都涵盖在里面。
And this variability is going to is going to now demand different capacities, physically and mentally.
所以，既然要这样子来训练，以及达到这样的训练效果，我们就不只是心理上，在身体上也要有不同的训练方式。
Now, we're looking at the physical qualities here, and just once again, looking at the image that we have in front of us, we can see hip dissociation, right? Separation of the front leg and the back leg.
好，在这个地方我们看到白色的运动员，他身体的上下半身的错位，所谓的髋关节的这个跟上半身胸椎的活动度的一个对向的活动，所以前脚跟后脚一个髋屈一个髋伸不同的动作形态。
We can see the association between the trunk, upper body, and the lower body. Just look at number 7, how he's twisting his body, where his hips are facing one way, but his torso is facing a different way.
所以我们说的 Deceleration， 所谓的错位，就是我的上半身 upper body 跟下半身他们所面向的方向不同，所以上半身往这边，下半身往那边。
If we look at the athlete in white, we can see that he's also separating different parts of his body in different directions.
所以我们也看到他的身体在不同的方向上打开，朝向不同的方向，所以分开了他的身体。
And the shapes of the positions might not be perfect. And in the field of play, they'll never be perfect. They're going to happen how they need to happen.
好，我们会看到，其实他的动作或者他的摆位，并不是我们心中所想象的完美，但是不完美在竞技场上才是常态，它本来就不应该是非常完美的动作。
The body has to demonstrate the ability to adjust and adapt every single millisecond.
他的身体必须要有能力，在每一秒或者是毫秒里去调整以及适应场上的需求。
Because that's just the physical part, but it's also the mental part where the players are making split-second decisions.
这个是我们身体上的一个呈现的变化。那同样的，在我们的心理上，其实也有不同样的一个变化在里面，因为它必须要在不同的时间做出不同的判断。
And because of those different qualities, when we look at multi-directional speed, we need to start thinking about not just the physical qualities, but also the mental qualities and how we can put those two together to develop better movement capacities.
那由于是这样子的一个情形，他的身体跟心理上都要面对不同的挑战，所以我们会知道多方向速度其实是生理跟心理的一个结合。
So, to summarize what we talked about so far,
好，那到目前为止，我们来做一下总和。
we said that multi-directional speed covers 3 main aspects of movements.
在多方向速度上面包含了3项元素。
Linear speed,
第一个是直线速度，
which is going to cover acceleration, and it's going to cover absolute speed.
那它包含了加速期以及绝对速度。
Acceleration meaning the ability to produce force so I can change my speed or the ability or how fast I'm moving.
那加速期的意思是我如何给地板力量，然后帮助我速度越来越快。
Absolute speed is the ability to either sustain the speed that we already gained through acceleration or to continue developing speed at while maintaining an upright vertical position.
那绝对速度的意思是如何维持在我最快的速度上，或者是持续的维持住我现在的状态。
Reacceleration will be the ability to change between going at a certain speed, slowing down, and then going fast again.
那重新加速是在我减速之后，再把速度提升加快。
Another area that we talk about in multi-directional speed is the ability to decelerate and change direction.
那如果我们讨论到 多方向其他的方向上，那我们就有所谓的变向跟减速。
Change direction can happen because we want to reposition our body in space or in a field of play.
那所谓的变向是我必须要在不同的空间中产生出不同的动作。
Change of direction might happen because we need to decelerate.
那变向需要先减速。
And change of direction might happen because we need to decelerate and then reaccelerate into a different direction.
然后才能够再加速到另外一个方向去。
So now we look at two components that we need to consider when thinking about multi-directional speed training.
所以当我们讨论到变向或多方向性的动作训练的时候，有2个元素。
So now we're going to look into non-reactive and reactive multi-directional speed training.
那就是无反应性的灵敏性以及反应性的灵敏性。
So when we're thinking about non-reactive multi-directional speed training, the first idea that comes to my head is doing a drill with a ladder, with a speed ladder.
所以当我们在思考无反应性的训练方式，那第一个我们想到的就是用绳梯来操作。
Now, think about this. Maybe you've done something like this exercise. You know exactly how long is the ladder.
首先，当我们在做绳梯训练的时候，第一，我们会知道这个绳梯有多长。
You know the space between each square of the ladder.
然后我们看得清楚，我们也知道这个绳梯上每一块空间有多大。
Now the coach maybe told you and showed you the drill that you're going to do by stepping in and stepping out of the ladder.
然后教练也许会先示范给你看，怎么样踩进去，再踩出来。
So all you have to do is replicate the movements like the coach just showed you.
然后我们只需要做，就是再一次重复教练刚刚所示范的动作即可。
You know when the exercise begins, you know where the exercise ends.
然后你知道这个动作训练会从哪边开始，然后哪边结束。
So because of all those variables that you know, you don't have to make many decisions or think about it too much.
就因为你已经知道要做什么事情了，所以你根本不用想太多，或者是自己做判断。
So this is what we call non-reactive agility drills.
所以我们会说这叫做无反应的这个绳梯训练法。
It means that you know almost every single variable of that exercise.
这代表着你几乎知道所有要做的变化以及所有要做的事情。
You don't really have to make decisions about how you're going to do it. You just have to learn how to do it.
你完全不需要去想要做什么，你只需要学怎么做就好了。
This is like learning a dance or dance steps.
这就好像在学跳舞一样。
Right? It just happens in a sequence. 1, 2, 1, 2.
那它就是很节奏性的发生。
Once you know the dance moves or the dance steps, you don't have to think much about it. You just do it.
一旦你知道这个舞步该怎么踩之后，你根本就不用想就可以做了。
Reactive agility is a great way to start introducing patterns and movements and work and quality of motor control or quality of movements.
那这样的方式，无反应的这个方式，对于一开始学习动作以及控制是非常好的。
So, non-reactive agility is the foundation of how we can start training someone to start understanding how to move in different directions and start incorporating acceleration, deceleration, and change of direction.
那我们用无反应的训练方式，对于初学者来做非常好，因为它可以练习到所谓的加速、减速跟变向的所有元素跟基本动作。
Simple, foundations, and also it could be fun.
简单、基础，而且很好玩。
Now, this is all well, but we need to think about that in reality, in real life, it's not about just following the steps and always doing the same process or the same movements. In real life and in real sports, we're normally making decisions every single second.
在一开始的时候，这样子做就非常的好，但是我们也知道，在真实世界里以及在运动场上，这样子的事情或这样的情境是不会发生的，因为每一秒甚至比1秒还少的时间，我们就要一直不断的做出不同的决策。
So, this is how we get to reactive agility drills or exercises.
所以接下来我们要讲的是有反应性的敏捷性训练该怎么做。
Reactive agility drills incorporate decision making.
那有反应性的敏捷性训练最重要的是把所谓的决策这件事情放进来。
What does that mean? It means that the athlete or the client is going to do a certain movement, but he's not going to know exactly when or how long, how fast, how slow.
那意思就是我们的客户或运动员一样要做这个动作，但是他不知道什么时候、多快、做多久，或者是做多慢，这些东西都不知道，但是他要完成这个动作。
So reactive agility has this concept where there's one or more variables that are unknown to the athlete. The athlete doesn't know.
好，所以他们要做的是做一次，或者是不同次或很多次的这个决策。
So I can have my athletes facing me, and I can say, okay, when I say right, you're going to sprint to the right. Right? When I say left, you're going to sprint to the left. Right? But they don't know which one is going to come first, right or left. They just know that I'm going to call out one of those directions.
好，举例，我可能会站在运动员的前面，然后跟他讲说右边，那他就要冲向右边，或者是左边，那他就要冲向左边。那他完全不知道我会说哪一边，他要做出来的就是往瞬间听到之后反应，然后往那个方向去。
So that example right there has a little bit of reactive agility. Not too much, but just a little bit, because you don't know which direction I'm going to call out at any time.
好，那刚刚这个例子举例是有一点反应性的所谓的敏捷性训练，因为你会知道我要说的是哪一个方向，但是我一定会说一个方向，所以你其实有一点点的反应的元素在里面。
So before the athlete can demonstrate his abilities to accelerate into whatever direction, he needs to first understand which direction he needs to go and make the decision very fast.
所以他除了先要有很好的加速技巧以外，他首先要知道我要往哪个方向去做冲刺。那一听到指令之后，瞬间做出反应。
So this is where reactive agility can be very complex or it can be very simple.
所以这就是为什么有反应的敏捷性训练有可能非常的复杂，或者是非常的简单。
The best example that I can give you to understand these two concepts of reactive agility and non-reactive agility will be this.
那我可以用来给大家一个分辨有反应以及无反应的这个敏捷性训练最大区分的方式是这样。
Think about track and field 100-meter sprint race.
想象我们在田径场上100米的冲刺。
The athlete knows exactly how long the distance is, 100 meters.
那运动员知道这个距离有多长。
The athlete knows that the goal is to run 100 meters as fast as possible.
那运动员知道在这段100米的距离之内跑越快越好。
The athlete knows that he needs to stay on his lane.
那运动员也知道他必须要在直线上冲刺。
The athlete already knows the strategy of how he's going to run that race.
那运动员也知道他在冲刺这100米的时候策略要怎么运用，以及他如何跑这100米。
This is non-reactive agility because he already knows all these variables before even the event starts.
那这就是所谓的无反应性的敏捷的一个形容方法，因为我已经知道所有的变化，所以意思就是我在做这件事情的时候几乎没有变化。
The only decision that he needs to make is when the gun goes off.
而他唯一要做的决策是，当他一听到枪响，他就得要用最快速度冲出去。
When the athlete hears a gun, he knows he needs to sprint out of the blocks as fast as possible for 100 meters.
那他一听到枪响，就冲出他的这个加速器，然后用最快的速度到达终点。
We will describe that as non-reactive agility.
那我们就说，这就是所谓的无反应的敏捷训练。
Now, we'll contrast that with a reactive agility sport like soccer, basketball, tennis, rugby.
那我们的相反就是有反应性的这个敏捷训练，几乎是所有我们所提到的球类运动，篮球、足球，所有的网球，任何的这些橄榄球都是这样。
The athletes know the rules of the game, the dimensions of the field, right? And what is the objective of the sport?
运动员知道这个他们的运动形态，他们知道他们比赛的规则，他们知道这个比赛的目标是什么。
But they don't really know how the game is going to develop. They don't know what movements they're going to do.
但是他们不知道这个比赛会怎么样的发展跟进行，下一个要做什么样的动作。
They don't know how fast they're going to have to do these movements. They don't know when they need to change direction or decelerate or accelerate.
他们不知道他多快要做这个动作，他不知道何时要加速或减速，或者是变换方向。
Because this is going to be all dependent on the context and the situation of the sport.
这完全取决于当下这个比赛的进行，以及当下的这个节奏跟状况。
So their movements, they're going to be the result of their reaction they're going to make from the decisions they're making every second of the game.
所以他们的动作就取决于他们每一秒所做的决策跟判断。
So sports like soccer, basketball, etc., are a great example of what reactive agility ultimate level is.
所以刚刚所提到的篮球、足球这类的球类运动，就是非常好的一个来判定我是所谓有反应的敏捷性训练的这种方式。
Now, the reason why I wanted to introduce these two concepts to you is because it's very important to distinguish the difference between some drills and other drills.
之所以我们在这个所谓的有反应跟无反应的这个敏捷训练上做这么样的讨论跟分辨，原因是因为我们在做训练上的动作是完全不一样的。
It's very common to see coaches wanting to introduce reactive agility drills too soon into training.
因为我们非常常见，教练们会把有反应的这个敏捷训练方式太快的放进我们的运动员或一般大众的训练模式里面。
And it's okay, but we need to be aware that reactive agility has a higher risk for injury.
虽然这样子也可以，但是我们必须非常的小心，非常的小心，因为有反应性的敏捷训练其实存在着非常大的风险。
Because the basic qualities of acceleration, deceleration, and change of direction, they're going to happen sometimes unexpectedly, meaning that I'm not sure when they're going to happen. They're going to be reactive.
这是因为他们要做的加速、减速以及变向动作，他们根本不知道何时要做，所以这几项元素会大大的影响或产生可能的运动风险。
And if I don't have the physical qualities to be able to do those movements properly, my risk for injury is going to be higher the faster I move.
以及我的身体的能力，假设我还没有准备好，那我就非常容易把自己放到这个运动伤害的风险中。
So the safer way to begin is by starting with drills like the speed ladder drills. There are going to be more control environments for movements.
所以比较好的训练方法，比较安全的训练方法，就是说在这个绳梯上，我们用很控制、很精准的动作来完成我们所要的基本训练。
Where we can have more possibilities to control the quality of movement, the speed of the movement, the duration of the movement.
那这样子，我们教练也比较好控制运动员的他的速度、他的动作模式、他的品质以及他的各个方向。
And that way, we can introduce and start teaching how movement should happen organically, and then eventually we take it into more complex like reactive agility.
那也因为我们一开始把动作给它训练得非常好，那来到越来越复杂的环境下或者是要求下的时候，那当然我的身体能适应得更好。
So now, what we can now think about is how do we construct movements that they're going to be multi-directional, that are going to be simple to introduce in any type of training session.
那接下来我们就来探讨怎么样建构我们多方向的动作模式。
So we start by developing the foundations of movement.
好，所以首先我们先来建立跟学习所谓的基础的动作模式。
And this is what we call the base position.
好，所以这就是我们说的所谓基础的准备姿态。
We also call it sometimes the athletic position.
我们也会常叫这个动作叫运动员姿势。
You can see this beautiful model in the videos doing the base position.
啊，我们会看到这个非常美丽的模特啊，在非常标准的展示给大家看所谓的基本准备动作，或者是运动员姿势。
So let's break down the movement by looking at the video.
那我们把这个动作来拆解。
First, we're going to widen the vase of support, meaning that we're going to separate our feet about hip or shoulder width apart.
首先，我们要把我们的基底打开，就是我的基础两脚之间的距离打得宽一点，让我很稳定。
We're going to keep the weight towards the inside of the feet.
然后把我的体重放在两脚的内侧。
And we're going to put the weight a little bit more forward towards the front of the foot.
然后分别把两脚的重量往脚掌前脚掌的方向放多一点。
Weight distribution is key because it's going to allow us to set a good foundation for movement in any direction.
那这个重量分别、重量分布的这个技术非常的重要，因为在我们做任何动作上面的时候，都是第一件事情。
Now, the second part that we're going to see, and it's important to take notice, is the triple flexion that we see at the ankle, knees, and hips.
第二件事情是我们的三关节的角度，脚踝、膝盖跟髋关节的角度。
We're going to lower the center of mass, meaning the center of our body, by getting into that triple flex position.
我们会把我身体的重心降低，然后让我的三关节，就是刚刚说的髋膝踝，进入到弯曲的角度。
Think about this like getting into a deadlift position using a barbell, or more like a trap bar deadlift.
你可以想象我们在用杠铃或者是六角杠来做所谓的这个硬举的动作，硬拉。
The base position is a little bit more hip dominant.
那这个基础姿势是稍微的比较偏向髋关节主导 （hip dominant）。
We want to keep the back flat or neutral position.
我们想要让我们的背是直的，或者是所谓的中立姿势。
By keeping the chest slightly upright.
保持我的胸口稍微的直立。
And by looking straight ahead.
眼睛直直的朝向前方。
because that's where the action is happening.
因为这就是动作以及这个所有的场上要观察的地方。
Now, this base position here might not look exactly like this, like in this video for everybody. It might look a little different.
那真实大家在操作的时候，可能会跟影片中的人有点不一样，稍微有点不同。
But the goal is to be able to distribute the weight, set a little bit of tension or compression into our body that's going to allow us to move in any direction we want.
那我们的这个基础准备姿态的目的，就是要让我的身体保持一个很好的张力，稍微有点压缩，然后让我能够在各个方向上很快的能够做出动作出来。
Something very important and unique here that this is not a sport specific. This is just a generalization of a position that it can be used in any sport and that we will see in any sport with a little bit variability.
好，那这个基础准备姿态其实是非常重要的。那在不同的运动里面，稍微会有点不一样。
One little detail here that I want you to notice from the video is notice how the model, right, me, is shifting the weight a little bit, right? It's not necessarily static. It could be, but I don't want to keep it static. It's kind of shifting the weight constantly. It's being ready for action.
那大家一定都有观察到一个讲师在这里面所做的一个小诀窍，就是当他在做运动员准备姿势这个动作的时候，你发现他并不是死死的站在地上，而是两脚一直有重心转换的这个情形，在这边保持轻微的跳动，以及维持它的敏捷性、肌肉的弹性。
That little bit weight shift and play allows me to keep my muscles within tension and maximize that spring capability of the muscles and the tendons.
那它的这个轻微跳动的情形，就能够帮助它保持着它肌肉的张力，以及随时能够启动所谓的筋膜的这个准备力。
All right. So this is the foundation of the movement, and we're going to see how we're going to start many other movements that we're going to see later on from this position.
那这就是我们的基础准备姿态，那非常好的一个动作模式。
Okay. Next one is going to be the movement that we call shuffling.
好，下一个动作我们叫它 shuffle， 就是侧滑步。
Notice that the shuffle develops from that base position that we just saw in the previous slide.
那大家注意到这个 shuffle 姿势、侧滑步姿势，它的动作形态就是刚刚的基础动作形态的一个延伸。
The objective of the movement is to move laterally by keeping a low base position.
动作的目标就是要能够横向的保持这个姿势来移动。
The height of how deep we're going to go in the movement is going to depend of the sport, of the situation.
那这个高度，我们重心压低的高度要压多低，取决你的运动形态跟当下的情形。
But one thing that we want to notice is that the feet remain within about hip width apart at all times, or a little bit wider.
但是我们会发现有一个重点，就是两脚之间的距离是一直维持在我们刚刚的基础形态，甚至稍微宽一点。
The feet do not come too close together. They stayed apart.
我们的两脚从来都不会很靠近，它一直很努力的打开。
Because every step that we take or every shuffle that we take is putting us back into that base position where we can go in any direction we want.
因为我们之所以保持两脚打开，是要让我们随时保持在基础动作形态上，我们的运动员姿势上，因为那样子才可以让我瞬间做出不同的动作跟反应出来。
The arms are usually not going to move very much in this movement just because of the pattern being sideways and because usually this movement is not going to be very long.
这个动作中，你会发现两只手基本上不太动，原因是因为当我在横向移动时，我的双手基本上不会参与我的动作，而且这个动作模式，侧滑步的动作模式，通常不会执行太久，所以我的双手 不需要太多的这个动作。
So you're going to keep the arms to the side while being able to just move the body from the legs, and the torso is going to be stable.
那你就会发现我的两手一直在我的两脚旁边，那跟着我的躯干一起活动就好了。
Okay. Now, this movement, it can happen in a very short distance, but sometimes we might extend it a little bit longer just to develop the capacity of movement under control.
那通常这个动作实际发生的时候是很短暂的，但是我们在练习时稍微拉长一点时间，因为我们希望能够建立我能维持这个姿势的动作模式跟记忆。
So shuffling is a movement that we can use to reposition our body in space or just to relocate our body or cover some distance.
那我们在场上做这个侧滑步动作，就是在变换我在空间之中的位置，把我的身体放在不同的地方来做移动，这样子的一个概念。
The shuffling is a very valuable movement in sports, but we got to recognize that the shuffling is a slow movement.
那我们必须知道，这个侧滑步常常发生的，但是这是一个很慢的动作。
Most of the times, we're going to see shuffling within defending situations.
那最常见到侧滑步的时机，就是在看到我必须要防守人家的时候，防守我的对手的时候，就会看到侧滑步。
When you're tracking someone in the field.
当你在追某个人，或者是一直在防守某个人。
Or when we try to just to reposition our body in the field of play.
或者是在场上，我必须要重新找到我的位置。
Now, this is just one movement that it can happen in different angles. It doesn't have to happen exactly just side to side. It can happen diagonally as well, but it will be the same movement.
那这个侧滑步不需要单纯只能侧滑，它也可以做出横向的，甚至 Z 字形或者是斜向的动作。
Next foundational movement that we're going to break down is going to be the crossover.
那下一个动作我们要来拆解的就是所谓的交叉步。
The crossover is another movement that we use to reposition our body in the field of play.
那交叉步是另外一个我们让我们的身体在球场上重新定位的另外一个动作，
or to change direction.
或者说我们要变向时候的动作。
Now, in this movement, what we're going to see is the ability to cross one leg in front of the other.
好，大家看到的这个动作必须是让一只脚穿过我的身体，
And the hips are going to spin one way while the torso remains positioned in the other way.
然后我的髋关节会朝向某一个方向，但是我的躯干就是身体依然保持着朝向的前方。
This movement requires a little bit more coordination just because of that separation of upper body and lower body moving in different directions.
那这个动作需要一些协调性，因为我的上半身跟下半身会朝着不同的方向去，好，维持在不同的平面上。
The arms are going to be a key role in this movement because they're going to help us coordinate the action of the hips and the legs with the torso.
那这个时候，我的手在这个动作里面就变得重要起来了，因为它会跟着我下半身的动作来产生一个反应。
Now, this movement is very unique because in one movement, in one crossover, it allows you to cover a good amount of distance.
那这个动作其实非常的重要，因为一个好的交叉步就会帮助你，确保你的这个横移的位置跟位移是非常好的，非常大的。
So when it comes to repositioning my body in the game-like situation, this is a very efficient way to just, bam, quickly cover some ground.
所以当我在球场上真的要变换我的方向，或者是很快的追上我的对手的时候，这个交叉步就非常重要，因为一瞬间你的漂亮的动作就能够帮助你很快的重新找到你的定位。
In this example, we're doing a crossover to base. So notice that we're going back to the foundation of all movements.
那所以这个动作也必须要让我们在基础的这个动作形态，就是运动员姿势上非常非常的完美，才有办法做到。
Now, this movement can also happen in different directions. It can happen to the side, it can happen slightly forward, it can happen slightly behind.
那这个动作也不完全需要在完全的这个侧向的面上面，你当然也可以做到后旋转，也可以做到前面一点点，也可以做到另外一边的后面一点点。
But the principles are the same.
但是原则上都一样的。
The key principle is the ability to dissociate lower body and upper body.
那原则就是把上下半身很好、很清楚的分别开来，区分出来，让他们做出不同的动作。
Now, let's look at these other variations of multi-directional movements.
好，我们再来看不同的变化动作。
These ones are usually a combination of change of direction and acceleration.
那这个后撤步动作其实是综合了所谓的交叉步以及加速的动作。
In this video, we're seeing two variations.
那这个影片里面有2种不同变化。
The movements that happen behind is what we call the drop step.
那这个动作我们叫做后撤步 drop step。
The drop step, meaning that I need to drop back.
意思就是我必须要把我自己瞬间的带到后面去 drop back。
Now, one thing that I want you to maybe appreciate and notice is that one leg is going to push or attack the ground to allow to initiate the movement to start spinning towards the direction that I want to go.
那你会发现一只脚瞬间踩踏地面，创造我身体向后移动的动力。
Right? So once the foot initiates that movement, it's going to start spinning the body. And now I just turn into an acceleration mechanics.
那所以你会发现脚一踩踏地面就能够发动这个动作，让我能够向后冲刺。
The arms are going to work as a trigger for the movement. And that's why the arms need to work together with the separation of the hips and the rotation of the hips.
那你发现我的手就像手枪的扳机一样，借由手跟脚的协调动作，能够创造我髋关节瞬间的推蹬，所以手一定要跟脚一起协调起来。
Now, remember, this is the drop step, meaning that we're trying to move back behind us.
那记得这个动作叫做后撤步，所以我们意思就是我们要瞬间往后跑。
The directions can vary, but it's always going to be towards the back.
那方向可以变化，但是总是要往后。
One key factor here is the ability to turn the body as one unit.
那在这边有个重要的要件，就是要把全身当成一个单位。
And to try to move away from the starting position as quick as possible.
然后要把我的身体移往同一个方向，然后越快越好。
Let's take a look at the other variation, the open step.
好，那我们再来看下一个动作，它叫 open step， 前跨步。
Notice in this video that I'm doing this movement in two different angles. One is very wide, the second is a little bit narrower.
好，大家可以看到，我们这边做的2个角度，一个是非常的宽，打开非常大，一个是相对比较窄一点。
The principle is the same as a drop step, but the difference here is that I'm moving forward in an angle.
好，那原则上跟后撤步的动作是一样，但是我的角度不一样。
We're gonna attack the ground with the back foot. The back foot is gonna initiate the movement by stabbing or pushing the ground.
在这边前跨步的时候，动作发动是借由后脚瞬间踩踏地面，创造动力让我冲刺向前。
The front leg is gonna move into that sprinting acceleration position.
那我的前脚会瞬间进入到冲刺的姿势。
The arms are going to join the actions of the legs to be able to transfer force into the ground and reposition the body in the direction that we want to go.
那我的手臂借由跟下肢协调的摆动，让我下肢能够有效的推蹬地面，产生力量给地板，然后让我能够向前推进。
The goal is to reposition the body on the field of play as quick as possible.
那这个动作的目的，就是要让我的身体快速的进到我下一个要去的位置。
And to allow the body to move as one unit as it separates in sprints.
然后让我的身体像同一个单位一样，瞬间的加速。
So these two movements, these last two movements, the drop step and the open step, they're related and they look very similar. It's just different directions. Drop steps
那
behind.
这两个动作看起来很像，那只是方向不同。
So those are going to be some of the foundational movements that we can see in multi-directional speed.
好，那这就是我们所谓在多方向速度动作上面所会看到的不同的几个动作形态。
By no means we cover all the movements that you will see in any sport. That will be impossible.
那到目前为止，大家几乎已经在所有运动里面所会看到的动作，都已经在这里呈现出来了。
These are just some examples of some of the most common movement patterns that we see almost across any sport.
那这些动作模式，其实就是我们在各式各样的运动竞技场上所能看到的最常见的几种动作模式。
They are usually expressed in different styles and forms and directions and speeds.
这些模式会以不同的速度、不同的方式、不同的姿势以及不同的这个形态呈现出来，但是都是这几个动作的基本样子。
But we could say safely that these are some of the foundations of multi-directional speed movements.
所以我们会说，这些动作就是多方向性的速度训练、敏捷训练上最重要的基本形态。
Now, so the question is, how can we take these ideas and concepts of movements and start applying this to general population non-athletes?
那再来是我们怎么把这一些想法跟观念放到一般人群跟运动员训练里面呢？
So we understand the basics of what multi-directional speed is.
首先，我们知道什么是多方向训练的重点，
Acceleration, deceleration, change of direction.
就是这三件事：加速、减速、变向。
We understand that we have non-reactive drills and reactive drills.
那我们知道有无反应的训练方式以及有反应的训练方式。
Non-reactive drills, there's no decision making.
那无反应的训练方式是不用做决策。
Reactive drills, we have decision making.
那有反应的训练方式就是我们必须做决策。
And now we have the foundation of the movements as a generalization that movements that we're going to see in sports that they're multi-directional.
那我们接下来就会把这些方式放进我们的训练方法以及训练场上。
Base position, shuffle, crossover, open step, drop step.
那我们有哪些动作包含了侧滑步、交叉步、后撤步以及前跨步的动作模式？
So now let me give you some examples of how we can take these ideas and use it with everyone.
好，那接下来我们会给大家一些举例，怎么样把它放进我们的训练方法里。
One of the easiest ways to introduce multi-directional movements is in the warm-up.
首先，最容易放进所谓的多方向训练的方式，就是把它放在暖身的部分里。
The warm-up is a moment that allows you to introduce variability, something new, and something fun.
那暖身的时候，就是最容易让我们把这个又新又有趣的动作模式加入进来的时候。
Because the warm-up, it has one goal in mind, which is just getting ready for movements.
因为 我们暖身的目的有一个目的，就是要让我们的身体准备好不同的动作。
And to get ready for movement, we can do it in many different ways.
那为了要准备好我们待会的动作，所以我们就可以做任何不同的方式。
When, for example, in the workout, squats might not have as much variability, but warm up, yeah, you can do almost anything you want.
因为举例，假设我在做蹲举的时候，其实我不太能够做其他的变化的，但是在暖身的时候就可以啊。
So here in the video, you can see that we are introducing movements like lateral shuffle with the arms, diagonal shuffles.
所以在这个影片里面，大家可以看到，我们会做横向的移动，加上手臂，以及做上这个 Z 字形的这个横移动作。
Basic movements like the carioca and marching.
然后来到这个麻花步跟跨步的动作。
What's important here is that it's allowing us to express movement in different directions.
最主要的目的还是要让我们的身体尝试在不同的方向上跟不同的动作上的一个组合。
And that these movements are low intensity.
而这些动作其实强度是不高的。
And because they're low intensity, it's okay if they're not done perfectly.
那也因为强度不高，所以我们在做的时候做的不是很完美，没有关系。
And it's okay if they're not done perfectly because you're going to be able to do this many times, even in 1 week, because it's part of the warm-up.
那再来，我在1周里面做几次，其实没有关系，多做一点也 OK 的，因为这只是暖身。
So think about general movements, basic calisthenics, and other movements that you might think of that you can use as part of the warm-up that's going to include variability, and it's going to make it different and fun.
那所以大家在做暖身运动的时候，尽量把你认为需要或有可能的动作放进来，这样是很好的，因为它既有效而且很有趣啊。
We like to surprise sometimes our clients and athletes by throwing some different movements here and there, something that they haven't done before in the warm-up, just to even get their attention and get them more interested in what's going to happen in the workout.
用各种方式让你的运动员或客户没有尝试过的，让他们能够专注起来，让他们能够更加的兴奋，更加的开心。那用这样的方式来达到我们很好的训练效果。
The one thing to consider here is that these movements do require a little of space.
再来，像这类的动作其实不需要很大的空间的。
So if you don't have a lot of space in your environment and you have a big group or you have more than one client, this might be a little challenging to do.
当然，如果你的客户比较多一点，然后你的空间并不大，也许一开始是有点困难的。
So it's just something to consider.
这当然是大家所要思考的地方。
But if you have the space, hey, go for it. Give it a try. Try some of these movements.
那如果你有空间的话，尝试看看，尽量踹不同的动作模式，这是非常好的。
Now, another way to introduce multi-directional speed for general population besides the warm-up, it will be doing some type of more reactive drills or what we call rapid response drills.
那再来，我们可能在一般大众的训练或课程里面放进来的时机是所谓的反应训练的时机。
Some of these drills that we're showing right now, they could be also used as part of the warm-up, as the last part of the warm-up when we really want to get the temperature up and get the nervous system fired up.
那像这一类的动作，我们所谓的反应训练，其实可以放在暖身的后面。这个时候，其实它的强度是比较高的，因为它的速度要加快，力量要增加，然后让它的血液流量继续提升，然后让它的神经更加的亢奋。
Some of these movements might be used within even the strength session as one of the complement exercises, just to add a little bit more heart rate.
那这样的动作，所以反应动作也可以放在这个力量训练的板块，那让你的这个心跳各个方面能够更加的提升。
Some of these movements might be very short, like the ones we were seeing, and they spike the intensity very fast just because the movement is fast, even though they don't require a lot of space.
那这个动作也许时间上是非常短的，让你很快的就让你达到你所要的训练效益。那空间上也不见得需要很大。
So this is another way to add a little variability within your strength session or your workout by adding some movements that they're not using dumbbells or machines, and you can do something like in the videos, rapid response.
那这样的动作训练其实可以放在大家的主要训练或者是所谓的这个力量训练的板块，那让你的训练之间不需要器材，也不需要额外的东西，就可以很快的就是把反应训练加进在你的主训练里面，达到更好的训练效果。
The recommendation here will be to start slow with the movements, teach the pattern.
OK， 那我们的建议是，一开始的时候动作放慢一点，让你的动作模式先建立起来。
And then as they get better at the movement, then start adding a little more speed.
那当他已经熟悉或适应了这个动作之后，才增加速度。
Once they develop the movement quality and the coordination, then we can add the speed and we can add more repetitions or more time doing the movement.
那当它增加了动作质量跟它的协调性之后，那我们才加速以及增加它的分量。
There are many different ways. There are different examples. You can find a lot of ideas online on the internet. But remember, always quality over quantity.
我们在网络上其实可以看到各式各样不同的想法 idea， 那这些都很好，但是永远别忘记，总是先注重品质，再来增加数量。
The value of these movements is teaching you motor control and coordination.
那我们这样的动作就是要增加你的动作控制，增加你的力学的一个稳定。
So they can be used in the warm-up, they can be used in the workout, they can be used as part of your finisher or conditioning.
那你可以用在一开始的暖身，可以放在主训练之中，当然也可以放在最后所谓增加你体能的这个部分。
Okay. Now,
可以吗？
when it comes to other movements that we can use, especially as conditioning, these are some great examples of ideas.
那当然，我们最后一个可以放在就是所谓的能量系统的部分。那这个地方会给大家一些这个想法。
So when it comes to your conditioning, you can go on the bike, you can go on the treadmill, right? You can go on the climber.
大家可以在脚踏车、跑步机、跑台，或者是说这个攀爬机上面来做。
Yeah. You can do finishers with dumbbells and calisthenics.
你也可以做用哑铃来做一些综合训练。
But sometimes we want to add a little variability and be able to introduce some multi-directional speed patterns as part of the conditioning.
但是我们也希望能够在这个时候增加一些多方向性的能力。
We can go back to the example of the ladder, and we could use the agility ladder as some of the exercises that are going to be part of the finisher. It might not be just the ladder, but we could be part of it.
那我们也可以用绳梯来做我们的 finisher， 就是最后的总结动作。不见得一定要用绳梯，但是可以用。
And this can be done for a longer extended period of time. So you can do one pattern over and over for 45 seconds and then rest for about 15 to 25 seconds before you do it again.
那我们所做的做法可以用45秒，这个操作这个反应的动作，然后让它休15到20秒左右。
Now, in even these videos, you see that I was demonstrating movements that similar to the agility ladder, but without the agility ladder. So if you don't have one, you can just pretend that you have one.
那大家可以看到，像我们现在在做的这些动作，基本上是刚刚在绳梯上做的动作，但现在并不需要用到绳梯，只需要假想我有在用绳梯就好。 在没有绳梯的状态之下，假想我的身体，然后去模拟那样的动作，快速的反应出来。
Always encouraging good quality of movements, control, and coordination.
总是记得我们要保持很好的动作模式品质，然后很好的协调性。
If we have more space and we have the time, we can now get a little more creative with the drills by using cones and set more of an agility type of drill.
那我们如果有足够的空间，空间够大，那这个时候我们可以使用所谓的角锥来做更多的动作的组合。
In that example right there, we're going for different directions based on the command of the coach. He might say left, he might say right, he might say back, he might say forward.
那这个时候，想象就像我们在影片中所看到的，这个时候地上有很多的角锥，那由这个教练来提出指令，啊，比方说要你往前、前面、后面、侧面，那让我瞬间的来做出反应。
So that is one way to introduce reactive agility, low level.
那这是一种把这个敏捷训练用低强度的方式放进我的课表里面的方法。
The way we keep it safe is by reducing the distance between the cones or the movements that we're going to be doing.
那我们如何维持所谓的高质量以及安全的这个控制？只要我把这个距离放短一点，以及把我的动作形态减少一点，那就能够维持比较安全的一个训练过程。
Also, the way we keep it safe is by asking the person to first do the movement slow and control and learn the pattern, and then eventually start speeding it up.
那另外一个也是很重要，我们用来降阶这个训练方法的方式是，我们要求我们的运动员或客户做慢一点，越慢越好，控制这个动作，确保它安全没有问题，动作品质很好之后，才请他加快，再加快。
Another consideration here will be the duration of the movements. If we go for too long, fatigue is going to start setting in. The legs are going to start getting tired. We're not going to have as much control of our movements, and then that's where the risk of injury goes up.
那另外一个也是很重要的控制安全性的一个元素，就是这个时间不能够拉太长，因为一旦拉长了，客户感觉到疲劳，感觉到肌肉的无力，那他的动作就势必一定会变化，那这个时候风险就会快速的提升。
Now, finally, another way that we can introduce change of direction, multi-directional speed is by adding some type of play or games.
好，那最后如何把这个多方向性的敏捷训练放在课程里面？非常好的一个方式就是用游戏的方式来呈现。
These are basic, simple games that do require a little bit of space, but trust me, they can be super fun.
这就是我们很简单把这个敏捷训练或多方向训练放在课程里面的方式。的确，我们需要一些空间，但是相信我，这个空间只要我们能够做到，真的能够非常非常的有趣，能够调动非常多这个客户跟运动员的训练的动机，竞赛的动机。
Because of the nature of the games, like a sport, these are going to be considered reactive agility, meaning that there's going to be decision making.
因为像这样子的一个游戏方式，就像在运动里面一样，就像在竞赛里面一样，它的确需要很多的这个决策，在很短暂的时间之内就做完。
So these are gonna have our clients and athletes express the movement in many different ways.
因为这样就可以很自然的让我的运动员很自然的去接触以及尝试这些不同方向的动作。
You're gonna have to make decisions in fractions of a second.
然后他们必须要很快的做出决策。
And they're gonna have to move in whichever way they can.
然后他们必须要能够在任何的方向上、任何动作上都能动。
They won't have time to think about how they're gonna execute the movement.
然后他们可能没有太多时间去想他怎么做这个动作。
So this will be games and sports are the best way to express natural movement qualities and abilities.
那所以像这样子的游戏，就是最好用来探索以及让人去尝试不同方向、能力、动作的方法。
We do this with our clients, with our general population clients, about one time a week.
我们通常会给我们的客户，一周做一次。
And we do it for about 10 minutes at the end of the session.
那这个时间长短大概是10分钟，在整个训练或课程的最后。
This will be a way to replace conditioning or ESD, as we like to call it at Exos.
那我们通常是用来替换，代替我们在课程最后的所谓的能量系统训练，或者在 Exos 里面叫 ESD。
And the most important factor of all is that these games are fun.
那最重要的元素就是真的很好玩。
People laugh, people smile, and they enjoy themselves playing a game that makes me feel like athletes, that make them feel again like a kid.
那他们在过程中感觉到哇开心，他们会欢笑，他们会笑，然后让他们自己真的有种哇我像运动员般的感受，然后重新回到像孩子一样的那样子的心情。
I think it's important to remember us as fitness enthusiasts that we join fitness because it was part of a sport and it was part of a practice that we used to do, and it's because it was fun.
那想想我们这些健身的精英们，我们在训练上之所以会接触训练，可能是因为我们当时是因为运动的需要。那其实不要忘记，我们当时其实喜欢运动，也是因为可能它是很好玩的。
So games like this and like we've seen in the videos, they're the most natural way to express multi-directional speed.
那像在影片里面的游戏，就是我们最容易能够让客户能够尝试到多方向性训练或多方向的一个效益的最好的方式。
While keeping things as safe as possible.
那当然要让这个过程越安全越好。
So, to summarize everything that we talk about today.
好，那我们来总结一下我们今天所学到的所有东西。
We introduce multi-directional speed as one way to train different movement patterns with any one of our clients.
那多方向训练就是是一种让我们的客户能够尝试到不同训练模式的一种方法。
We said the multi-directional speed is defined as the capacity to express movements in different directions at different speeds, and that includes different components.
那多方向训练是用不同的方式来让我的身体能够尝试到不同的动作模式。
The main components are linear speed, acceleration, absolute speed, and deceleration.
那第一个，它就是所谓的直线速度。那直线速度上分所谓的加速、绝对速度以及减速。
Multi-directional speed, we have different patterns like shuffling, crossover, change of direction, deceleration, reacceleration.
那多方向性的技术上就包含了横移、交叉步、那加速、减速、再加速之类。
Now, we also said that we can break down multi-directional speed in two qualities, non-reactive and reactive.
那我们可以把这个多方向性的速度又把它分成有反应跟无反应的这个方式。
Non-reactive, no decision making.
无反应就是不用做决策。
Reactive, meaning that there's decision making.
那有反应就是在过程中我要做决策。
Remember to always try to start with non-reactive first to teach the basic patterns, and then take it into slowly a more reactive type of drills.
那别忘了，我们总是为了安全，我们必须从无反应的这个无决策的方式开始，因为我们要确保动作是安全、质量是高的。
Then we talk about the basic patterns of foundation movements, multi-directional speed.
然后我们来说这个基础的这个多方向性的动作。
Base position is that position that looks like a deadlift and is a position that is universal and it allows us to move in any direction we want.
那我们的基础动作形态就是所谓的运动员姿势，还记不记得看起来就像在做硬举、硬拉的动作一样？那让我能够很快速的做出不同方向的反应出来。
We said we have shuffling, which is the ability to move side to side by staying in that base position.
那再来所谓的侧移步、侧滑步，是我们向侧边来做快速的移动。
We have a crossover, which is the ability to cross one leg to reposition our body and get into acceleration or back into base position.
那再来交叉步，是让我一只脚穿过我身体的中线，让我能够快速的重新定位，或者是朝另外一个方向做加速。
We have the open step and the drop step to get us moving forward or moving back quickly.
然后我们有后撤步以及前跨步，让我们往后方或前方能够快速的位移。
These basic patterns that we can take in and start applying them in our training sessions.
然后这些基础的动作模式可以把它放在我们的训练计划里。
And one way that we can inject or introduce multi-directional movements in our training sessions is in the warm-up.
那所以第一个，我们可以把它摆在我们的课程的暖身部位。
In the warm-up, we can move in different directions and try different new things, always at low speed and not very complex.
然后我们可以用各种各样不同的动作、各种速度来做，那不用担心，因为强度不高。
Within the training session, when we're lifting weights, we can add some movements to increase a little bit of the intensity by doing some rapid response movements, doing some type of reactive movements, but they're very short in duration, short distance.
然后，如果我要放在我的主训练或力量训练板块的时候，我可以用很短的时间、很密集的动作、比较快的速度，然后让我达到一个足够的刺激。
For conditioning, we can also add movements or drills like the speed ladder or using some cones to now do continuous movement with different movement patterns.
然后最后是在能量训练的板块或者是 ESD 的板块，我们可以利用 ladder 就是绳梯或者是脚锥，让我能够尝试我们所练习的这些动作，或者是把它做个组合。
And the last one was to add some games to have some fun.
那最后就是把它做成一个游戏，那让大家一起来感受快乐。
So those are many different ways that we can introduce multi-directional speed with general population or even with athletes as well.
那这就是我们用来帮助一般大众以及运动员来做的多方向训练的方法，非常好用。
I hope you walk away from this presentation with some different ideas that you can start applying in your next training session with your clients.
那我们希望大家结束这个课程的时候，能够带走许多我们的想法跟思路，能够真的帮助你的客户得到更好的效果。
In behalf of Exos, we want to thank you for attending this presentation.
那我们代表 Exos 感谢大家很仔细的聆听这堂课程。
We want to thank Idea Fit China for inviting us to present to you guys.
那感谢 Idea Fit China 让大家有机会接触到我们。
I want to thank Gary, our translator, for doing a fantastic job.
谢谢Gary 好，
Thank you guys. 谢谢。
谢谢大家。